Seven Generations Center of Excellence in Behavioral Health. And today we have Dr. Lisa Grayshield from New Mexico State University to talk with us about Indigenous ways of knowing, and it has a longer title, but that's okay, I'll let her talk about it.
I had a great PowerPoint to show you, but it's not working.
But we're having technical problems, and so we're going to do it old school. I also have a sign-in sheet that I would appreciate your signing in. And I've known Lisa for 3-4 years now. We met at a conference in New York, and then last January, the hawk feather that she carries around for prayer and all of that chose to reside with me. And so we've been working much closer together ever since then. We had discussions about bartering and exchanging students with our various programs, but we decided that they should probably have some choice in the matter, that we shouldn't necessarily decide their lives for them.
But if you'll let us, we'll be happy.
Yeah, well, we'll work it out for you if you'll let us. Anyway, I will turn things over. Dr. Grayshield is a graduate of the University of Nevada, Reno. She's from the Washoe tribe in California and Nevada, and is now in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and managed to get up here in spite of everybody traveling back from spring break and there hardly being any seats available yesterday. So I'll turn it over to Lisa.
Always nervous when I first start, so be patient with me. Washoe, Washoe de Momo, que le da Kashna, India, Dr. Lisa Grayshield. To remind myself when my PowerPoint goes blank that this is not about me. This is about, it's about all of us. It's about a mandate from spirit world to stay connected to the earth. And our educated young people, Indigenous people like yourselves, 7th generation, it's up to you to do it. So I'm honored beyond belief to talk about the things that we all came here to do together. So, thank you. And maybe I'll just open up by letting each of you share your name. I recognize you. You're looking over at me and I go, I'm not there, and I recognize her. And I think I recognize, I don't know, maybe I've seen you guys. Anyway, so we'll just kind of go through and everybody just tell me your name and I'll tell you a little bit more about me. So, me and Lauren, it's really good that we're all here together. Who wants to start?
I'll start. My name is Lisa, and we're actually from the counseling center. Jane Ramsey, I met you at the retreat.
I don't know which one.
Data psychology, the
Oh, okay.
SIP conference 2 years ago.
Yeah, last year I was supposed to do a talk, and
Yeah.
I was on my way, and I got sick. I felt so horrible about that, because I thought, here, SIP said, yes, you can talk. And I didn't make it, and I have students there, yeah.
Yeah.
I hope you had a good time. Yeah.
I'm Jay Brooksby. I'm part of the UCC staff as a regional this year.
I'm Kathy Spencer. I'm a librarian I'm Kirsten, and I'm actually a nursing student here, and I'm doing meditation at the nursing center.
I'm Kevin.
Jay?
Hello, my name is BJ Rainbow. I'm a graduate student in the Educational Leadership Program. I'm going to graduate in 2 months.
Awesome.
I'm Melissa. I'm a student in the counseling psychology program.
My name's Courtney, I'm a business major.
I'm Eric. I'm a student in the Department of Educational Foundations and Research, and I'm also a staff member at Grayshield.
Well, Washoe to Momokin, but gosh, I'm a Washoe. I'm from the Carson Colony area. And, I would have had a nice symbol of the Washoe tribe and all that up here, but, I thought about going PowerPoint free. So I guess I did create that. So I'll just, skip all that. I grew up in my, with my tribe, my tribal culture. And when I was young, knew that I would be on the medicine path. And so I had elders and people that worked with me from the time that I was young. And what I was told was really, I wasn't given a huge amount of training other than don't be involved in a lot of other ceremonies and stuff. Just, stay pure to the culture. And so I did that. And, there came a time when that shifted. But that's what happened. That's why our elders tell us what they tell us, because those are the protective factors that we have to remain resilient and strong. They're wrapped up in our culture. And so, I can tell you a lot about myself. I'm a res girl. I have 3 daughters. And my daughters are Gabrielle, and she is 2 classes away from completing her master's degree, and I'll probably tell you a little bit more about her as well, because I have this big sign. We're doing I Walk, Indigenous Ways of Knowing, and so we had a conference last year, and it was I Walk Around, and it was about learning about like how to wield Indigenous medicine, how to do it, to learn about what you need to learn about. And so, I was there, and Gabrielle was taking her last few classes, and she just had a baby, and the sign says I Walk Around, and she looks at me in my office, because she went and she dropped out of her last few classes in her master's program. I'm like, what are you doing? 2 classes left. And she just, she said, hey Mom, she said, I walk now. And she did. So, my daughter is attempting to live that kind of life with her family, with her 2 children and her husband. And she got married last year at the ceremony. And her husband is, one of those white dudes that just drove me crazy because he wanted to know all about Indian stuff. And I'm like, look, And so we learned a lot. We learned to humble each other. Big Canadian, good-looking, blue-eyed white dude come in and sweep my daughter off her feet and think he's going to come in and try to be Indian. I'm going to tell you a thing or two, buddy. And we made him toe the line, and he did toe the line, though. He has a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul, and he toed the line. And so, he's very involved in his own form of ceremony. And the beautiful thing about the 7th generation that's coming up is, even though we do pass our traditions on, and it's incredibly important to do that, to pass those traditions on, you will take the energy of that and create something so much more powerful and so much more beautiful that will help us to turn around the direction that this earth is going in. Because, we have our ceremonies, but we haven't been able to stop that momentum of Western European thought processes, especially in healthcare. So, Star Nations. We have the 7th generation and our Star Nations. If we were thinking from an Indigenous thought process today, it would not be uncommon for everybody to turn to this little star child and honor her and say, thank you for being with us. That would not be uncommon. That wouldn't be weird. It would wouldn't have to feel strange or having the urge to say, the star nations are among us. So, try not to get too. Bring it back down into the cognitive, behavioral realm here. Kind of get out of that. I'm slightly nervous too as I talk, so, but, again, this isn't about me, it's about all of us. So if there's something that you want to know or a direction you want to go, I'm just going to tell you about myself. And, I'm just going to go with that because I think all my stories will come out. So I have, 3 daughters. This is my oldest daughter, and she's, really, for the last year has been living that, Indigenous kind of lifestyle, which is really interesting to see this roll out, maybe the forest, where she's taught me quite a bit, and I've learned quite a bit by just hanging out with her and my grandson in the forest and just playing with him. And I can just dream of him growing up. He's just, just 2, and I can just dream of him growing up and, playing in the beautiful waters, the Gila River that runs through there, and playing in the hot springs. Because as you walk up some of those paths, the water is so warm. And I was walking up there by myself one day, and the river was warm, and I just thought, oh my gosh. There is paradise. It is here on earth. And there's so little of it left. So I can imagine my grandson playing in those warm waters. And I can imagine him eating the plants and collecting the plants and making tea and sitting in the hot springs and, and enjoying a beautiful life. And communing with nature. I can imagine. And when he steps into the modern world, he'll have so much to offer. So much to offer. Because he'll be grounded all the days of his life as a star child. I can imagine that. I can see it. So, and my second daughter, she went back home. She came with me to New Mexico. Her and my youngest one, they came to New Mexico, and they finished their last years of high school. And when I got my teaching assignment in 2000, and my middle daughter just, she's a registered Cherokee tribal member. My 3 daughters are, and so she's got a little bit of something coming in to help her out, and she spent every bit of it flying back and forth to go home. And she went to school at NSU, and she enjoyed her school, but her connection to people and land, because of her being, born in that area, was just so strong for her. So she ultimately met somebody and married somebody there. And now I have another grandson. And then my youngest daughter is 21, and she's another absolutely amazingly beautiful 7th generation person on this earth, and has also has contracted diabetes and has had to work with that. And that's in our lineage. It's fairly scientific. We can see what's happening with things like diabetes in the world today. There's been a 70% increase in incidences, especially of childhood and especially of diabetes coming from families that didn't have it before. Is it any secret what's been going on? A breakdown in our diet, and the food systems. Even our food today, it's got toxins in it. Some countries don't even want it. We've got Monsanto we've got to deal with. Can't we even get seeds? We've got to be careful about where we buy our seeds, where we get our seeds now. I could never imagine that. Who would have thought that would happen? But that's the reality. That 7th generation. That's for you to turn that around. It's It's for your parents and your grandparents, us, me and Jackie, and, us to support you through that process, of finding your space and what it is that you're going to do, because as Indigenous people, I talk about an Indigenous paradigm. We're all Indigenous. Every single one of us is Indigenous. We have different flavors, and we're not necessarily exactly from, our indigeneity may be a little bit more farther removed from our lineage, but somewhere down the line, you're Indigenous. And what does that mean? That means that we understood innately from a spiritual place our interconnectedness with the earth and the cosmos. We understood that, which is incidentally our indicators of health and well-being, is our connection to Denelo Sanguntan, all the relations from the stars, Hanayagayati, the one from above, and Ngawadala, our Earth Mother. That sustains us and feeds us and has been there for us and is there for us. So, it's a big job to be seventh generation. And, I'm committed to helping anybody who asks, in that way and comes in that way to work in that way. But my department found out real soon that I had very little tolerance for, a lot of just the continuation of this structural paradigm that we live in, because that's what we do as social scientists. We are structuralists and continuers. We maintain the dominant power structure. That's what we do. Unless we make a choice not to. And then we have a big task ahead of us. And that task is to, what all of my colleagues, Indigenous natives, wisdom keepers that went before me, Kaheti, Deloria, all these amazing people that have been writing in the field and helping to record this have said, it is our responsibility to activate and affirm the Indigenous paradigm. It's our human and social just responsibility to maintain ourselves, the interconnectedness that is our birthright as human beings on this earth. And that's our connection to the sky, Denelo Sanguntan, to the Earth Mother, the Ngawadala. Like I said, those are our indicators of health and well-being. That indicates. Now, what are the domains that we can work in as counseling? Let's get real practical here. What are the domains that we can work in? Well, that would be the north, right? The east, the south, and the west, right? That's what that is. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. It's intelligence. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It doesn't all mean the same thing. So thank God for that. Because, Degmigi Etha is all the knowledge of the universe, all the things that are to be known out there, but we don't actually know them, and we don't really have to know them. Because we will know them when we need to know them, at the moment we need to know them. Because our responsibility as human beings on this earth is to journey, it's to experience it. It's to cleanse and purify, to lay the foundation for the future, for the successive generations that are coming after us. I just recently bought a piece of land in the Nahila wilderness. I left my home, my car, my fancy lifestyle, and I put all of my money towards this. I wanted this piece of land. This lady agreed to sell it to me, but it was going to take everything I had. So I did it. I said, yes, let's do it. And so I made this really small note, and I've been living up in the Gila for a year now. And it's a little tiny cabin, you know, trying to get rides to and from Indigenous during the week, you know, where I work, you know, and then get back to stay where I am grounded. And I'm trying to remember why I'm saying this. So please stay with me, and if I start to lose my track, somebody help me out. What was I saying? I'm telling you about the land that I'm living on because of the connection, I suppose. You know, maybe that's it. You know, because of the connection. I think I was also talking about that I have very little tolerance for assisting people with structural continuism. But it took me a while to understand what I was doing. I didn't get it in the beginning. And I'm not, you know, and I say that without judgment. Does that make sense? No. Of course it doesn't make sense. But what I mean by without judgment is I say that, you know, with understanding that I didn't understand none of us understood individually what we were doing. But, you know, we didn't really understand that. You know, what we are doing is, you know, when we take a step back out of our own lives and we look at the lives of our family members, we're concerned. Some of us more than others. Some of us aren't concerned at all because maybe there's some privilege there and you didn't really get an opportunity to experience the concern. And if you take a step even out of that into your community and you look around, and depending on what community you come from, there's another vantage point. And then if you take a step outside of that into the political systems in the state, well, there's another vantage point. And there's some more insight. And then if you take another step out of that into the United Nations, or we start looking at what's going on around the world. What are we doing? Can somebody answer that question for me? I didn't go to school and sacrifice all this time to go through Western education to continue that process. I'll tell you that for sure. That's not my heart. My heart is to see people heal, is to see people become whole, is to see people not need the medicine. That's what I got into this. That's why I revered knowledge. And that's why I went to school and I wanted to see what there was to offer. And I learned a lot about myself. And now I have to go back home to my elders and back to my culture and back to nature now to then learn how to really help anybody who comes to me and asks me to help them. I have to stay grounded. That's just intelligent. You know? Who am I trying to fool? Our bodies are representations of the lives, you know, of everything that's going on, right? Okay, let's step outside of the UN. Let's step into the cosmos. Let's step into the planets. Let's step into our own energy structures. And you will see that they are mimics of each other. We are the universe, you know. We are in ourselves, have that ability. How's that sound to you guys? Am I getting really weird now? I could talk about the Syrians and the Andromedans and, you know, the Arcturians, and we could go there if you want to. But it doesn't matter, does it? I mean, there's structures and systems around every paradigm, and there's multiple ways of thinking and reality, and academia tends to separate that out and restrict our ability to really process all of that in a dynamic way. Eek, did I say something that I'm going to regret? No, I didn't. Because you know, we're all in this together. Digum hiki anawia. And I just became a grandmother less than 3 years ago. And I got to be there for the birth of all 3 of my grandchildren. That was amazing. My third one, didn't actually get to be, I was there right afterwards. You know, but, you know, I got to watch those grandbabies come into the earth. My daughter had a TV ceremony, and they asked me to carry water. And I'm like, okay, I've only been to a few TV ceremonies, but I'll carry water, you know, for my grandson, you know, for that TV ceremony. And so, you know, it came the time for me to get the water, to pray over the water. And so I just thought about those warm waters up in the Gila, and I met my grandson's father, my son, who I've taken as my son. I met him in the Gilas when I was on my journey, you know, hitting the mountains with my backpack by myself, saying, man, I'm getting out of this thing place, I gotta go, I have to breathe. And you know, I was seeking my healing up there, and I met him at this hot springs, you know, that was supposedly a home of Geronimo, or, you know, something up there. And there's definitely some powerful energy up there. You know, it tends to draw some people, you know, so, you know, anyway, the journey is more fantastic than we're gonna go, you know, I probably just have to write it and let it say it's fiction. You know, the way that things roll out. But when we follow, when we step into spirit and we step into nature, then anything becomes possible. You know, I believe that we can change the direction of this world if we release our minds a little bit and step into our own power and our own energy. I believe with all my heart that we can do it, but Indigenous thought process has to lead the way. 7th generation has to do this, and we as parents and grandparents of 7th generation, who are the parents of the star nations, and those star nations, they'll determine how things are going to go, because they won't be questioning their values. Star nations won't question their values. Because the 7th generation, you're figuring it out for us. You know, we got you here. And you know, we need you to step into your own space, your own intellect, your own vibration, your own self-actualization, and lead the way. You know, do the best you can do in Western education. Read everything you can read from Indigenous authors. And I don't want to say that anymore. I used to say it that way. I want to say it like this. From an IWAC, from an Indigenous perspective, from a connected experience. You know, I can talk about that scientifically, you know, if I want to sit there and I want to go into Hawkins and I want to talk about, you know, levels of consciousness, and we want to talk about vibration and brainwave patterns, and you know, the sounds of nature and the sound, and you know, we could talk about it that way too, you know, vibration. But as I look around this room, I can see that I'm not telling a lot of you anything you haven't already heard before. Or maybe I'm just saying it. You're 7th generation. We've got all the research. I had a whole PowerPoint of quotes to tell you about what the findings are, but basically when the verdict is out, the findings are Indigenous thought process must lead the way. And that is an inward journey. It's not an external journey. It's not about what kind of car you got and, you know, the house that you're going to buy. And, you know, it's certainly about resources. Absolutely about resources. You know, a lack of resources has disallowed our people to flourish because they're spiritual people. Indigenous people are spiritual people. We come from the spiritual dimension, and that's the inward. That's the deepest point. You know, I was having a talk with my dad, and, you know, my mom was saying, tell your dad to stop eating so much, Lisa. talked to your dad, tell him he's, you know, he retired and he was an Indian health service person, and he had these dreams of coming back to the reservation and, you know, doing something, you know, being a council member and stuff. And he came back to the reservation and there was meth all over the colony. And he didn't know what to do with that. You know, he joined the whole meth no tolerance thing, and he worked real hard and, you know, wrote a program and had some meetings and, you know, did what he could do, you know, and then he ran for tribal council and they didn't hire him. Instead, they hired the dude that was doing that. Or they voted the guy that was doing that then. And, you know, that was just heartbreaking and heart-wrenching for my father. As an honorable man, you know, who lived his life in a way that, you know, he could be of service to the people, and then he goes home to the people and, you know, they really didn't really want that help. They weren't really there. That was really hard for my father. You know, so we have some real challenges. And, you know, academia has a lot to offer in our calling to help people heal and to help the earth heal. You know, to be there. We can't help the earth heal. The earth is going to heal us. We can't do anything. What we can do is be respectful and allow the earth mother to wrap us up in her arms and you know, take care of us. You know, get back and talk to the plants. You know, imagine, you know, the beauty. And we have, I mean, everybody in this room can go home and grab a pot, even if you live in an apartment, and get some dirt, plant a plant, water it, and watch it grow. You know, beautiful societies all over the world, and we, as you know, have been destroyed, that were far more advanced in their thought processes. You know, and all of them knew about the connection with plants. There were gardens, in Mexico, you know, where the Spaniards came in and just annihilated these amazing gardens, and libraries of knowledge that were about plant processes, because you can't just learn about a plant and say, and bottle it. Because the active constituents in a plant changes and moves with the energy that surrounds it. It's a fluid process. We can't make a hypothesis, do an experiment, make a conclusion, record the conclusion, have empirical evidence, write it down, and then have that replicated and repeated. Because do you know what that does to a plant process? It stops it. Developmental, just the same way that developmental stages stop personal growth and transformation. Am I like treading on real soft territory? Somebody give me some feedback here. How am I doing? Where are you at? Where are you at? Let me know where you guys are at, okay? Where are you at? How you doing?
Good.
I had to bring myself back down.
I have a question, Dr. Grayshield.
Yes.
And I say this with the understanding that I stand entrenched in the midst of academia, especially higher academia. So that's kind of, I was hoping if you could speak to if there's any sort of cognitive dissonance in terms of trying to do, let's say, work of social justice or work of Indigenous ways of knowing, et cetera, but also inherently and inadvertently being part of said system. You know, what limits have you kind of seen, and what perhaps personal barriers, if you're willing to talk about, through that journey, through that process?
Well, let's see if I understand all the questions. The first question is, you know, just the transitions, right? The difficulties in the transition. Yes, very difficult, extremely difficult. I bought into the whole academic paradigm, and, you know, I didn't know any better. You know, my parents went to Indian board, my dad was in Indian boarding school, and, you know, he wanted me to get an education, he wanted me to do that, and, you know, and I knew the direction of my life. I say that right now. I mean, I went through normal, I'm a normal kid. I say medicine path, and that all sounds real good and dandy, and it is true. But, we all are there. As little kids, don't you know the world is a beautiful place and you can make it stay that way always? And of course you will. It's like, I had that as a child. I believed that as a child. And so when I went to school, I naturally assumed that it was going to help me to do that. It was going to help me to go home and help my people. I got something to, but I learned just the opposite. I learned how the world was rolling. And I certainly learned how to roll with it. But I didn't, the next step to that awareness is how to shift that momentum. I don't know, about slowing it down sometimes. We've got so many different systems that we have to look at, but, all we can say is what everybody else says, is that it's an inward journey. So I took the academic system and I quit. I'm really not trying to, talk shit about it, because it's helped me tremendously. I am standing here where I am today because of my journey through academia. That I can stand up here with my feather and I can be myself. Academia did help me do that. But there is something bigger than that going on in my life, and I know that, and it's going on in all of ours. It's not just me, but this is my way of knowing. I know that I came here to bring peace and love and beauty on the earth, because that's what my people told me. That's who Washoes are. We're peaceful people. We didn't even have warring words in our language. We're peaceful people. Our legend stories, I'll talk a little bit more about that. So when I was very disillusioned, and like I said, I was a res girl, man. I went through the whole res scene. I had partied and did that and went through my ups and downs, pregnant as a teenager, and my kid's dad is Cherokee, and I met him in Indian school, and we didn't make it quite through Indian school, went our separate ways, but I had that journey, that same thing, but I knew that the path was that I needed to follow my heart, and but I found out that the academic world is about gross national product. It's about numbers, it's about hierarchical order, it's about, and it's about, I'm not trying to say that in a bad way. That's what it's about. That's what I'm saying. It's about numbers, it's about money, it's about insurance, it's about buying a house, that's what it's about. Okay, that's necessary. That's important. But that's not, but indigenous process, from an indigenous paradigm, it's more than that. When we come to learn as PhDs and masters and stuff, students and stuff like that, we come to learn how to make a better world. That's what I believe. That was my paradigm. That's what I thought was the paradigm there. But we have pharmaceuticals. Do you think that's their paradigm? To make a better world? Do you think it's the pharmaceuticals company's paradigm to make a better world? Because plants have everything. That's where they get it from anyway. All their knowledge comes from indigenous stuff. And if we want to make a better world, let's go commune with some plants. Some trees. My teacher told, and so I know I'm going to get off because it's all going to remind me, my teacher said that indigenous medicine is twofold. It's about two things. It's about energy and knowledge of plants. So in other words, it's about our connection to the cosmos, and it's about our connection to Namatala. It's about both of those. So, an education and counseling from an indigenous perspective, what that would look like would be honing your ability to understand energy. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, a lot of different ceremonies, a lot of different things that happen, and you have ceremonies of your own, your indigenous all Indigenous people know about those kinds of connections, so there's a lot of information. And, you know, there's that one, but there's, and the other thing is our understanding of plants. So I'd say botany, man, what about the plants? You know? Conservation, the water, the elements, you know? And we go to school so that we have clean water to drink. Don't get me started on the water. I want to get going on the water, you know, because that's our lifeblood. And when I was walking through those rivers up there in the Gila, this is the truth. This is the you know, the beauty. You know, I had my big backpack on, and I just had an idea of where I was going, and had, you know, been out there a few times, and I was headed out there for a week this time. You know, I got a week. Everybody's gone. I'm going for a week. And so I turned up, you know, looking for this place they call Turkey Creek, you know, and all of a sudden, you know, I see it, and it, you know, it's all beautiful anyway, but, you know, it's just, I look up there, and it's like, oh my God, there's every color of rock you can imagine. Purple and lavender and green and every color, orange and red and yellow and different hues of those rocks everywhere. And so I'm walking up the water, and it's like, oh my God, I am walking in a warm river. And it was an alternate, it felt like an alternate universe, but it's real, it's there. The water was warm. I was walking, I had my backpack, and I just walked up this river, and I took my backpack off, and I set it, you know, by this cave that was out there, that was the destination of where I was trying to find that somebody had told me about. And so my backpack was so sitting there, and I just went over, and it was already evening time, and I hadn't set up my tent, and you know, and I was always had to be really careful because everybody's all, what are you doing out there in the wilderness by yourself? You can't do that, you know. It's like, oh yeah, if I don't come back, I probably wasn't meant to. You know, I was just needing that space and that time. And you know, I went and I sat in that water, and I slept in that river all night long. There was just this little sandbar, and I just scooched right down on that sandbar, and the warm water was going over me. And I was in a canyon, so I watched the moon as I laid in that water go from one side to the other. And oh my God. Whew, I want my grandchildren to do that. And so, you know, it is about, education is about, you know, that's what it's about. When that's what drives education and our pursuit of education, and then we're, you know, we're at the other end of it. It's not it's no longer gross national product. That's what we weigh. Is this gross national product? Or is this sustainability? Pharmaceuticals are not sustainable. Plants are sustainable. Pharmaceuticals make money. Anybody can grow plants. So, you know, my message isn't going to fall on a huge audience, but yours is. And that's why that's why I can stand here and say what I say. Because I'm just one person. I don't know much. I just know what I know, and it's not that much. It's just, you know, I got some things going on. You know, I've got some information that I like to share. You know, if somebody wants to listen. But, you know, I'm not going to do a lot with that. I'm going to share it. And then I'm going to go back to my little mountain cabin, and I'm going to plant a garden. And learn about the plants that are all over the place, the healing plants. I can tell you what I've learned about. You know, you're not feeling good, plants for emotions in the brain. You know, got something going on with your liver, you know, you're bleeding, you need some stuff, you know, got some internal bleeding going on, got some plants for that. Make you a tea. So that's what it did, you know. I just got a little Indigenous counseling minor going on right now. I'm just still trying to, you know, bridge the structure of trying to get in. But when it gets down to it, what an Indigenous counseling program is going to look like is maybe one class on the history of counseling psychology, because it is important to understand where you come from. But then you're going to focus on personal growth and transformation. You're going to settle for nothing less than physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and spiritual well-being. That's what you're going to do. And then You're gonna learn about plants. All kinds of plants. Plants for food, that's the future. Of not just counseling psychology for Indigenous people and by Indigenous people, but that's the future of social science and all other sciences coming together. Because I want my grandson to walk through those warm waters. And I want him to sleep in that warm pond and watch the moon. And he does it. He does it. And because of that, he'll be forever grounded, you know? I'm not gonna worry about those things that we all have to research about, drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, because those things don't make sense to our star nations. Why would you do that to yourself? Forget it. You know? Because, you know, the verdict is out. I read a series of books over my sabbatical. I never would have read them before. They're by an author, a Russian author named Vladimir Merezh. Anybody heard of him? Vladimir Merezh. And it's a book. It's an Anastasia series. And you know, the first book is Anastasia. The cover of it is this paradise and this bombshell blonde, you know, with boobs. You know, just stand there. I mean, I would have never just picked it up. I would have went, oh, that's cute, you know. And not my book, you know. I mean, and so I wouldn't have, you know, wouldn't have got me. But my friend said, you got to read these books. You have to read these books. And I said, all right, you insist that much, then I'm going to read the book. And I'll read the first one. If it intrigues me, then I'll read the next one. And I read the whole series. And essentially, Anastasia is a woman that has lived her entire life in the Siberian tundra. Now, this is the story. All of life is a story, so I'm not going to argue authenticity. I'm not going to go there because it's all possible. It's all, you know, what did Einstein say? Whatever. Okay. Anastasia. You know, so she grew up her entire life in the Siberian tundra, and she was of the lineage of a priest class in Russia that the priest class that was the ruling class that eventually became evil and then had to be broken away from, and then the separate government, and then, you know, those kinds of processes. So Anastasia, her grandfather mostly raised her, and the piece of land that she was raised on was a piece of land that was in her family for, like, you know, I don't know how many, I can't remember, generations and generations and generations. So they knew from the very core of her DNA, her energetic body, the relatives of the trees that were there, and the animals, you know, their parents and grandparents and grandparents. I mean, the animals were descendants of the animals before. So, you know, and they all shared this space in, you know, this really magical, you know, Garden of Eden way. And this was Vladimir Merezh's, you know, he met her, and this was his account of her and her, you know, her processes and who she is, and, you know, this absolutely pure soul. So, you know, you imagine this space and you think, nobody can live like that. It's not going to happen. What are you saying? You know, we can, and you know, and her thing was, you know, she was saying it. I go, well, how come she can say it? I want to say it too if she can say it. Yes, we can live like that. We can live like that, and I'm going to live like that. And so, you know, just this incredibly beautiful way of living with nature, you know, but she comes from a lineage, and we don't get that. We don't even have that, man. That's been bred out of us, that indigeneity. So essentially, she got to live her indigeneity, you know, and she didn't want to leave her paradise. She would leave a little bit and go on a few little adventures, but, you know, she wanted to stay there, and ultimately had some children, and had the children and is raising them there. You know, and so and you know what she says to the Russian government, you know, and these books kind of ended up being a political plea to the Russian government to give everybody a hectare of land and allow them to build their space of love, you know, and to return to that knowing of the earth. We know from energetics and neuroscience and all of that kind of thing that when we connect with the earth, that we hone the highest vibrations that we have. The vibrations that yogis and meditators and athletes that are functioning and at their highest level and artists that are functioning, they have a brainwave pattern. And that they're touching God, essentially, you know, their God, their inner core when they're expressing themselves through their art. And there's a brainwave pattern. We can see that on a machine now. Yeah, we can see it. Now, you know, that's the process of, you know, enlightenment, I suppose you could say, you know. We find that enlightenment. It's all of our want to be at that high vibration level. Who doesn't want to be there? You got the perfect amount of sleep, you have the perfect amount of food in your body, your mind is clear, it's clean, you can think straight, you feel good, you know what to say, what to do. I mean, who doesn't want that? All of us want that. You know, but we have so much stuff that's come through our genetics that we have to work with. You know, so to get to where Anastasia is, we have to turn things around. And we can only do it by starting with ourselves, and we certainly can't go out and say, give everybody some land, you know, and do that. We can't, I mean, that's not there, but we can do what we can do for ourselves and our family. You know, we can do that. So that was, you know, so I read that whole series of books, and, you know, and basically it's the Indigenous message too. That's the Indigenous message. It's just, you know, sitting with yourself. You know, if you want to be a good therapist and a good counselor, get quiet with yourself for a long time. Maybe 200 hours. You might, you know, 200 hours of silence. That would be a class. In an Indigenous counseling program. Thank you. It's nice to meet you. So I don't know. Anything else? Is there any questions? I can keep going on. You know,
I have a question for Grayshield. You know, as you talk, it seems it's very clear to me that, you know, when I think of an Indigenous sort of paradigm, spirituality is very much infused in that. It seems like it's infused. And when I think of, like, at least like in Western society, you know, rejection of religion or just not, you know, spirituality not being very important to oneself, that's not necessarily a rejection of like a Western perspective. Would you say that a rejection of spirituality is synonymous with a rejection of an Indigenous sort of perspective or an Indigenous paradigm?
You mean, is it like sort of different? Is the religion?
I guess, like so I guess my question is, I'm kind of looking at it from a counseling perspective. If I had a youth, or native youth who, you know, for that person, spirituality or religion is not important to him
Got it.
or her.
Okay.
You know, would it be one of my goals perhaps to maybe have that person maybe back in touch with some of those roots, like those
Okay.
spiritual roots or those cultural roots, or I guess that's kind of what
Yeah.
I'm looking at.
Well, there's a couple of things in understanding when we're working with people. First of all, as an Indigenous practitioner, I can't work with anybody that doesn't ask me. And even if they're sitting in a counseling session with me, and, you know, I'm going to work with them, it doesn't matter what my intention are. They're not going to open up to me unless they ask me. And when I mean ask, like somebody might say, will you help me out? And you'll sit down and you don't know what to do. You like, hey, you're not ready to let that go. So we'll just do some talk therapy here. Let you know, talk yourself into what direction you want to go to. So my goal, maybe that's what you're talking about. My goal as an Indigenous therapist, and I'm not making any claims on licensure, and, you know, I want to make a disclaimer here, you know. When I work with people, I don't want to say therapist. Somebody told me that said something. I'm going to break the word up, but I don't even want to repeat. So it would be to have people get in touch with themselves. And you can't be in touch with yourself without the spirituality. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's all the same. You can't talk about one without talking about the other. You can't. It doesn't work that way. You know, we are spiritual beings. All of us, every single one of us. And when we're in touch with ourselves, that becomes clear to us. But if we're out of touch with ourselves, that's not clear. And so we have all these constructs. But, you know, okay, so I walk is an Indigenous paradigm. And there's some constructs that define them, and one of them is connection to spirituality. I just had a student, I had PowerPoint, I was going to show you, we'll probably have to figure it out next time. But or I can email it. But the student, and she just finished her dissertation in Maryland, Dr. Begay. And Dr. Begay is a Navajo medicine woman, and she, is part of the Medicine Society, and she works at Gallup Behavioral Health, and she, is their spiritual person on call. And Marilyn's dissertation was on the experiences of Indigenous, Native, tribal counseling psychologists who got their degree in, mainstream counseling psychology programs, and then went on to, and are also recognized Indigenous medicine people within their tribes in a respectful way, just recognized people. So she interviewed 8 and ultimately selected 4 to put into her paper. And we looked at these themes. We looked at all of this in-depth interviews, and we came up with 4 themes. And the biggest, most salient theme that popped up was spirituality, and we lumped things together because people did talk about them differently. So we had a big discussion on how the development of these themes. Spirituality and culture, and spirituality as a way of life. Spirituality and culture as a way of life. All of them. It's not separate. And when things got tough, all of them went back to their cultural ways and tried to understand. And I did the same thing. I'm a counseling psychologist in a university department with people that are training people to be counselors, and I'm falling apart. I'm having a cultural dilemma. I walk into my classroom and just freeze. I was PowerPoint dependent at that point. And, and there was nothing that could help me. I go get some medicine. That'll relieve the stress and mess my brain up. I could do that for a while, which I did. Or, there's other things that I could do. I could go party my ass off on the weekends to relieve the stress. All those kinds of things. But what I did, because I care so deeply for myself and for my family and for the people that depend on me and for the reason I got into this profession, is I went back to my culture. Spirituality and culture is a way of life. And all the psychologists, all the Indigenous psychologists that were interviewed, that's what they do and did and continue to do and help their clients be able to do, is to go back to your own spiritual ways. Because spirituality is the deepest point of contact. And when your spirituality is solid, you are solid. I don't care how different we are. I wouldn't even argue flavors or brands, I wouldn't do that. And I know there's this in the Catholic Church and this and that and this in the, whatever, that there's bad and good and all of that kind of stuff too. But at the pinnacle of people's spirituality, when they're emanating love and concern and compassion on the world, that spirituality is intact. There's other things that follow that too. They can feel good about themselves. There's some emotional things. They can laugh, they can smile, they can cry. They can feel all that. There's not guilt and all this heaviness. They're pretty free people. Their physical bodies, that's always, or their minds, their cognitive minds. They have set their heart so much on things that their mind is, in a different place in their bodies, physical bodies. Spirituality covers so much more. Emotions, that's the next realm. Remember I talked about this, and I could, if you want me to, I could talk a little bit more about the practicality of an Indigenous paradigm in counseling psychology and how you can develop your own processes with that framework to help the people that you work with, but most of all, to help yourself. Because when you are grounded spiritually, emotionally, cognitively, and physically, and I would say spiritually and cognitively, spiritually and emotionally are absolutely the critical key points there. And we can't go from these lesser areas of physical and cognition to help our soul and our spirit. We have to come from the other direction. We have to go inward. So that didn't entirely make sense. But I'll think about that. Then, when we're in touch with ourselves, we can sit next to somebody else, and we can feel them. and you can feel where they're at. And with a little bit of knowledge, which I think counseling psychologists who are becoming doctors need to have, is a knowledge of those energetic systems known as the chakras, your chakra systems that run through your body, and understanding where your own imprints occurred so that you can seek your own healing. How do you know you need healing? Well, we all need healing in this world, in this day and age. Every single one of us. We've got something, that is going on at some level. And so I'm not saying go find what's wrong with you and go heal it. I'm saying let's just live in the best way that we can. Let's line those centers up, because when you're lined up, you can feel other people's unalignment. They're not aligned. If you're aligned, they're not aligned. You can tell where to help them, how to help them. It gives you have that information. It's more information than understanding their story. When I work with people in a therapy session, I have two stages. One is just release, and the other one is breaking it apart. Is release, so the person does the talking, and that's where if it's just an office visit, if that's what it is, it's first time or just getting to know somebody, they're doing the talking. I'm listening with all of my being, and I can't do that if I'm hungover, or if I'm on some kind of pharmaceutical drug that's keeping my head in some kind of place. I can't do that. I can only do that if I am grounded. Otherwise, I'm going to have to revert to those methods that I learned in counseling, because I won't be able to get them there. As a healer, I can work that way. As a counselor, I can rely on some of those other methods, especially through my learning process. I can do that. But you can get to the place where you listen to the storylines, and once those storylines have given you the information, then if they need to talk, they can continue to talk. But, if they've come to me, they've asked for a different kind of help already. They already know what they're getting. They've come to me. So if they've come to me, then my next counterpoint is to help them work with their energy. Just to work with their energy. However it is that I do it. Everybody has their own ways, that they have different traditions and different things that they do to do that. To become a PhD in a counseling Indigenous program is going to mean something. I mean, it is going to mean something. We don't have room for, we got a lot of work to do in the world. And if we can do that to ourselves, with ourselves first, because if we're not clear and we're not clean, when we sit with somebody, we're going to have what? Countertransference and transference. We're going to be dealing with that. Countertransference and transference. Because we don't really know ourselves. You got to know yourself. Mind, body, and soul. And I didn't. I didn't know myself. It took me a long time. I knew I had to get there. That was the Indigenous way of knowing. That was my knowledge base. That was my lineage. I knew I had to get there. Because it's a journey. I accept that life is a journey. But to bestow this PhD on me and then stick me in an office and send all these people in front of me and have me talk with them, I was like, then we got all kinds of things like racism and, all those constructs. I don't necessarily like to talk at that level. I taught multiculturalism, for the first, 6 years. I taught that class, and finally, I remember one year when I hit the wall. And I was having a real difficult time talking about all that stuff again, because it's like, can we just talk about consciousness? Can we just talk about energy? Can we talk about brainwave patterns? Can we talk about the things that actually keep us in those stupid, ridiculously low vibration thought processes? I mean, I was becoming bored. Just bored. And I was also on my own journey to heal. I wanted to, and then once I knew that I could heal myself, I was all excited. I was like, oh gosh, I can heal myself. I can heal my physical body by changing my diet and getting to know my body, and I can do that, and disciplining myself in ways that I'd never disciplined before. Be careful when you sign up for my Indigenous counseling program. So I knew my physical body, my mind. I knew that if I could change my perceptual experience, It took me a while to do it, that I could change the world simply by changing the way I view it. That I could help heal my clients simply by seeing them. Because I learned that I could do that. I just needed to know how. I needed to get there. Yeah, I needed to deal with my healing, my own processes and things that happen in my own life, you know, to clear that energy, to allow me to sit with somebody to do that. It took a long time. I'm still doing it. I'm not always there. I still, you know, we still have cycles. We all have cycles, all of us. Seasonal cycles, you know, moon cycles, all of that stuff. So, yeah, you need to know yourself. That's the tool. And then, when you know your client and you're looking at them and you can see, you know, that you got some physical stuff, so let's address that. I read an article that I was trying to think who sent this article out, and he's on a major nutrition kick because he's sending tons of articles out through the Social Justice Journal, Social Justice. And it says that if therapists, counselors who are working with people are not discussing with their clients and working with their clients about diet and exercise, then they are unethically practicing. Wow. How many of us have been unethically practicing? It's just not rocket science. We have to take care of your physical being, the way that you're thinking. If you're going to keep thinking about shit, guess what you're going to keep eating? You know, think about something different. We know what we don't, positive psychology, right? We know what we don't want. That's good. But you ain't going to go anywhere unless, what? You know what you want. So let's start talking about that a little bit more. We figure that one, okay? So that's that one, right? And then there's the emotional. So there's some areas, you know, it's like, no, I don't want to be that way, but I keep losing my temper. I mean, I got this temper. I got a raging temper. I'm just making sure I'm not going over. And it's so funny because I really had to start looking at myself. I have healed myself to the point of being able to determine, you know, to step out, to stop. Stop, you're all caught into that, stop. But it's still in me. I can still get really mad really fast. You know, and also I'm at the point where I can't not tell you the truth. It's not possible. You know, if your heart wants to know something and I've got an answer for you, wrong, right, or indifferent, or biased, or egotistical, or whatever it is, that's what you're going to get. You know, because that's the authenticity that comes when your energetic body is lined up. And, you know, there isn't a way around that. And I'm grateful for that because I would control myself a lot more if I had the ability to do it sometimes. And then the spiritual, you know. We've got to get in touch with that spiritual. Got to be in touch with that spiritual. So you have, you know, an Indigenous paradigm is about connection. It always informs those connections and that health and well-being in that way, and the directions. You know, there's so much we can tell you about the directions. I've got this diagram, you know, that we look at it as a therapeutic model. You know, the body, the mind, the soul, the spirit. Incorporate the elementals, the earth, fire, air, ethers, you know. I mean, incorporate those elementals, you know. Do some, you know, fire is a healing element. And this is scientific too. So I don't even have to sound too hokey anymore because I can give you the science behind it. You know, cedar, sage, copal, all those kinds of, you know, things that, they're menthol, bear root, osha, dodza, you know. Get you up into your head, clear you up out there, you know, stomach stuff. You know, all that kind of stuff. Jeez, it's like the veil just kind of like dropped. You know, the beauty of life is that we have it right here in our hands. So that's the choice that we have. You know, we make those choices. Now, it's hard to make some of those choices, okay? It's hard because we have pre-paved a road in our world that leaves a lot of work for us to do, for those of us who are able, who have the privilege to do the self-actualization process and the spiritual kind, and to take the time. That's what our programs should give you, is the space to do that. That's what our programs should provide for you in this busy world. You want to come in and help people? You want to come in and really help people? You have to start with yourself. And you have to be honest with yourself. You have to notice stuff about yourself. I mean, you have to start with you. I can't heal anybody. Nobody can heal anybody, really, truly, honestly. I mean, there are people who you can talk to them on the phone and their voice does something and you're like, oh, geez. You know, and then we have scientific evidence to support that these things do occur. People do heal from interesting kinds of things. Those things happen all the time. You know, people, you know, we have that. But really, what it is you can't be healed unless you recognize and you want and you see that you can. And then I'm not just talking at a physical. My father told me one time, my mom, I was telling you the story. I keep trying to tell you the story and I never finish it. My father said, my mom said, go talk to your dad, he's eating too much. So I'm like, I'm not going to talk to my dad. Go talk to your dad, he's eating too much. So I went and I talked to my dad. I said, hey dad, mom says you're eating too much. You know, it's like, you know, we were always trying to change his diet, trying to give him food without gluten, sugar, and, you know, and that kind of thing. My dad stopped and he looked at me and he said, Lisa, I'm going to enjoy my food. And I said, okay, Dad. My father is a spiritual man. He's not invested in that robe. Not now. He is invested. He's invested in enjoying his food. And you know what? Bless him for that. I learned so much. You know, the indigenous thought process is about spirituality first, not the physical. It's about the emotions and healing and knowing about that energy and vibration of that rules our emotions. Not about what we think and our degrees and how much we know and how much we can spew out. How are you guys doing? Questions? Comments? How about just some thoughts? I have something else. How about you tell me what you're feeling right now? What are you feeling right now?
I just have to say this, I want to know about the Gila forest that you've been talking about. It sounds beautiful. And where is it in New Mexico? I'm sorry, I'm not.
But that's fine.
I like.
There's always a rebel in the
I'm
group.
an
and
outdoors
asking
person,
everything.
so
You're not what?
I'm an outdoors person, so I'd really like to know where that is in New Mexico.
New Mexico.
It is in New Mexico, but is it in?
New Mexico,
is it in
Arizona.
Silver City?
Outside Silver City,
Yes,
yeah.
outside of Silver City. And you said the river that you slept overnight in?
Gosh, I'm afraid the whole world's gonna come. You're not showing this on TV, right? I gotta protect the Gila forest. No.
This is going out to the
Was
internet.
that in the forest? Was that in the forest as well, the Gila forest?
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful space, you know. It's so funny because it's like I feel that sense of, oh, let's keep it pure and beautiful. At the same time, you know, we have to, you know, it's like, yeah, it's amazing. There's amazing places all over the world. There's amazing places everywhere. My homeland's Lake Tahoe, Dahuaga. You ever been to Lake Tahoe?
Yes.
Yeah, paradise. Beautiful. But it's hard to get down to the lake. You know, if you're native, you know, because all the beaches, you gotta pay for them all. You know, we have a few spots that we can get down to. Yeah.
I'll just add a comment. It was interesting to me that as you're talking about academia and the need for basically a spiritual process in that to develop good counselors and the need for counselors to be in touch with themselves and the role of spirituality in that is basically the same criticism I had after my seminary experience to be a pastor. Was we were producing a lot of people who were well educated, who could have all the right answers and have all the right knowledge, but many of them, like, I felt like, man, we should have a place where people can get away for, like you were talking about, that 200 hours. Like that should be part of the requirement for the seminary process.
Yeah, I mean, how many hours you gotta do for internships? Yeah.
Yeah, like this is what's necessary.
Create it.
Because there are some great people, but not in touch with themselves or very unhealthy. And it's like, okay, now you're going to be in charge of a church, and now you're going to have hurting and broken people coming to you. And yeah, you might have all the trainings, or even some of the counseling skills, some of the pastoral counseling skills, but are you going to be able to heal them? Are you going to be able to meet them? Like, if you're not healthy yourself. Then I saw so many times like the transference and counter-transference and a lot of those issues, even in some of my classmates and myself. So it's interesting that I was basically, man, this is almost the same exact thing I was saying. So the need for a more robust actual spiritual experience as a requirement almost.
And and the two bodies of knowledge are together right now. Western science is very complementary of Indigenous thought process today. It took me, I had to go through that, maybe that's part of my journey, why I had to do what I had to do, because now I can talk about so many different levels. It's, so that's what my education did for me. It allowed me to activate the way of knowing, and it's very Washoe, and I can go back into that too, but it doesn't matter whether it's Washoe or it's Lakota, it's very Indigenous, it's connected, it's, I may go so far as to say it's common sense.
Yes, when I think of spirituality, to me it sounds like having a sense of privilege. I mean, if you have a client that comes in that's barely trying to find food and shelter, how do you work with them when they're it to me seems like Maslow's hierarchy where, spirituality is at the top and they're basically finding ways to even just live on a daily basis. How do you work with a client that maybe isn't necessarily wanting to work with spirituality, that's basically struggling?
You help them with their basic needs. You help them, whatever area of counsel you got in, whatever population that you're around, you help them get there. It's beautiful if there's like some communities, like they'll have some TV ceremonies or have something, and it caters. Indigenous process oftentimes caters to people that don't have that kind of money, and they can help each other out and build a community like that. And so you would certainly encourage, people towards community processes and community activism, because that's a way of building community. The community gardens, those kinds of things. We don't have to address spirituality by saying, go get spiritual, go find your ceremony. Spirituality is. That's all. It is. We can't not address it. It won't not be addressed. It will be addressed. It is. And so it's good to do it through building community. Community is always and it always brings people to spirituality. When there's communities are really down and out, that unifying presence really is a beautiful, empowering thing. So social justice movements are key to seventh generation work on this earth today, absolutely. Because we do need to allow people the opportunity to get there. I didn't have the opportunity to get where I'm at now while I was in my graduate program, because I was commuting an hour a day, raising 3 babies by myself, and trying to do my work study position, which was dealing with a whole, not work study, but my GA ship. And I don't mind, saying, I walked in to apply for the program and didn't even take the GRE, and they shooed me in so fast it made my head spin. And I realized it's because it was the year that KCREC was doing their evaluation, and they had no Indians. They didn't know, and they had very little color. And I was like, whoa. And I had a desk in the front seat, and my first assignment as a graduate student was to be a hostess to KCREC. I didn't even know what KCREC was. But I see these things, and I went through my different levels of processes, like, that's unjust, damn it, could be helpful, all right, now they're gonna pay attention. You gotta pay attention to Indians, they gotta pay attention to diversity. That's good. We have some good work. AMCD, American Multicultural Development, SIP, Society of Indian Psychologists, affirmative action groups, all of those people that went to Washington over and over again and lobbied for Indian Executive Order 1336, the Indian Education Act, and Title V, and all the languages for all that kind of stuff. Hats off, prayers out, respect. Nothing but respect. Because I stand here because of their work. And you are standing there in your ability to understand that you do need to do that work. And when we can learn to provide you the space to do it, then we get to go to the next level. We got some work ahead of us to do that. But yeah, I don't, spirituality is. I don't know if I answered your question. I never know.
I think I understand. I mean, it's kind of the same within, Western medicine or the secular world. We're good at treating symptoms. We're not good at treating causes. We're not very efficient at identifying the root cause of what's happening. And, the body is a system. It works in either disjunct or in harmony, and that's why you're sick. So, if you're trying to treat, somebody's physical ailment, when in fact they have deep-seated mental and emotional elements, I'm not quite sure to what level you're actually going to be effective at being a practitioner, whether it's within medicine or not. So, in some cases, yeah, I understand what you're saying, Leslie. To kind of do this like deeper level of spirituality, or perhaps even like this kind of philosophical stance, it's an impossibility, perhaps. If I'm on the survival mode, but in the same turn, I would also argue that maybe that's exactly what somebody in that particular, context would actually be needing or searching or wanting is both.
Yeah. I know I wanted it, I had to focus on it. And, as an Indigenous person, I knew that if I could get that straightened out, because I was separated from my tribe and my people, if I could get that spirituality piece figured out for myself, that everything else would fall, and certainly it did. It did, it worked. I focused on, I went back to my culture, I went back to the spiritual aspect, and I sought that spiritual road, and, I've never been a drinker or a big alcoholic or anything. I had my days, my partying days are there too. I had all that, but I knew that I had to make some sacrifices, and part of those sacrifices included not being lulled asleep by the distractions of the Western world. And then I needed to make a choice in my life. And I needed to quit being wishy-washy about it. That's my journey. That's my journey. I wouldn't impose that on somebody else. And then, of course, my 7th generation daughter, I'm like, I walk around, I've got my sign, you would have seen this as I walk around. My daughter says, hey, Mom, I walk now. And yes, she is. I sat in ceremony with my daughter just this past weekend, on Friday and Saturday night, and her husband, I told you this white dude, Christopher, he won my heart, it's all, it's all a funny story and everything, and I'm certainly humbled, this big, tall, blonde-haired Canadian dude doing the ceremony. I definitely did get myself humbled on that one, and they are living a incredibly beautiful life together and a spiritual path. And my little grandson knows more teepee songs and drum songs, spiritual songs from different traditions than I could even, begin to know. And he doesn't. They just don't live in the same dimensional reality that she was born in. She's leading the way for me. I'm still, I gotta buy a piece of property. I'm not, but where is the space for us to do this? The thing about it is if we look at the normal curve, some of us has got to start shifting it, right? Somebody has to do this. Some of us are going to study about it and try to bridge the ability for others to get there. And that's what we're doing for each other, is helping each other now to get there. But yeah, it's hard to do that, who doesn't want their kids to walk through a beautiful warm river and sleep in a cave and watch the moon go from one side of the canyon to the other? Who doesn't want that? And how many people actually get that today? But, we can turn it around. That's actually what Indigenous Washoe medicine is all about. Washoe medicine, to be a Washoe medicine person, does not mean that I'm going to yield any kind of anything. We do talk about magic. Magic is energy. That's the energy word. It's the magic. I can't remember what I was gonna say now, because I get too many thoughts coming at me all at once. The medicine is about, I can't think of my thought, my brain's gone. Being present, mindfulness. I have a colleague, Eve Adams, that she does a lot of mindfulness stuff, and I'm like, I'll make that a, you know, that could be a class in mindfulness is good stuff. Mindful eating, mindful living, mindful being, that's good stuff. I am, you know, absolutely incredibly honored to stand here and to have you, you know, pay attention to me. I'm just so grateful. I was telling you about the ceremony that I went through this weekend, so I'll tell you about that, you know. I thought I was coming here for 2 weeks, and I ended up, you know, we just got things mixed up and stuff, and so I had arranged to, I didn't have anything that I was doing that previous week because I was going to be here. So I didn't end up going, and my daughter and my son had organized a ceremony. There is a Peruvian medicine person that they had hosted coming down that my son is apprenticing with, learning about Peruvian medicine. And so, and you know, they're like, Mom, we're going to do a ceremony, you know, so I didn't go. So that must have been the reason that I had given myself all that extra time. And so instead I went and I sat for two nights in with them. And I sat in a space, a healing space. You know, I have a student and I that are doing a paper on space, creating and holding space for healing and transformation to occur. And so what happens is the medicine, the way that they do their medicine is they open the space to allow us all to step in and to do our own work according to what it is that we feel that we need to do. And the space opened up at some point. I was sitting with my daughter and my grandsons, and you know, my son is, you know, doing apprenticing, and you know, I'm like, you know, proud mama. You know, I'm just as proud and happy and crying through so much of it because I'm seeing the love that my children are pouring out on to the next. And so, you know, as I feel complete, I feel I'm the parent of the 7th generation, and here's the 7th generation doing 7th generation work, and here's me being a grandma holding the babies to make sure that they get to do their work, and I get to love on my grandbabies, and all is good and beautiful in the world. You know, the whole, it just was so perfect like that. And you know, and then there were plenty of people in the room, you know, probably about 15 to 18 people, and there were some processes rolling out that needed some help, and the energy was opened in such a way, and we had prepared ourselves together in such a way that it was free of ego and pomp and circumstance and Sunday best and all, and there wasn't any of that. It was just people coming together to help each other out and work in a way that the Peruvians know how to work. And so I, at one point, you know, realized the space of love that had been created was intentionally created and fostered by the fact that we had families and children in the room together, and everybody was supporting each other and loving each other. And I felt the energy running through my body physically. My hands were just sweating, just pouring this immense amount of just sweat. And you know, at one point, you know, I thought that I had a urinary or bladder infection. You know, before this all started, and I was thinking, God, this is going to get out of hand. You know, I need to go take care. I need to take care of this. Drink more, you know, fluids, more teas, and I had been doing that. But then, as I was sitting in that ceremony, I took that energy and I put it on my own body, and I have nothing. You know, so that's gone. You know, that isn't there anymore. Call it a placebo if you want. I sure like that one. You know, so that was gone, and it was still running through my hands, and I was helping my daughter, and the babies were asleep, and you know, they were helping other people, so I felt the call to get up and to go and to help somebody else, and that's all it was. There was so much love in the room, and that's what it was. It was an energy of love. There was so much love and compassion, that just being in the room was a healing space. And that was the space that was created, the space of love. And that's the spaces that this wave of the future counselors and Indigenous counseling will be creating for the people that you see, that they will step into the space that you've created. And there is so much love that the agreements they've made with their own energetic processes will be revealed to them, and they will be able to self-heal. And then in turn, go and create that space of love for themselves and the people around them. Because that's what happens when we heal. Everybody else around us also. It benefits from that healing, obviously, right? Because it's all energetic. We're either consuming energy, or we are pushing energy out, right? We're exerting energy, or we're consuming energy. So, anyway, what time is it, Jackie?
It's about 22.
Okay. I'm not in any hurry at all. I just want to make sure I'm staying on track and give you plenty of time to ask questions or talk. Or ask me to tell you something in a certain direction. My journey through academia has been difficult, though. I'll tell you, I have felt the worst I've ever felt and the best I've ever felt. You know, I felt humiliated. I felt, you know, like I'm in the wrong place. You know, I felt a lot. Mostly I have felt out of place, and I've gotten to the place where, because I've kind of gotten over myself and gotten to my energetic body, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Exactly. With the exact amount of knowledge that I'm supposed to have. I know what I know. That's all I know. It's not much, but it is what I know. And that's what I, you know, and if you know, I get an opportunity to share that, I'm so grateful that it's still valuable, and that, you know, it's not valuable. It's not old news. Pretty soon, my talk will be old news, because you guys are going to be doing the work. I'm going to be going, what they're doing, what they're doing, what my daughter and my son is doing, what they're doing. You know. So everybody saw 13 grandmothers? Did you guys watch the 13 grandmothers? What they say. I was watching a YouTube. You know, I got internet at my little cabin in the Gila, and I had, you know, I spent all sabbatical with no internet. You know, I have to just when I went down the hill to call people, and so I got the internet, and so I'm watching the 13 grandmothers and cooking, and my partner is sitting over on the other side with his headphones on, watching Die Hard or something. I don't know what he was watching, but you know, I'm just like, put your headphones on. I don't care what you do or watch. You know, that's your journey. You know, but I don't want to watch it. You know, so he's watching his thing, and I'm watching the grandmothers, and I'm cooking, and all of a sudden, I'm like, yes, yes, what they said. I'm like, and you know, he takes his headphones off. It's like, try to watch a movie here. You know, and I'm like, okay. And finally, he put it down, and he came over. He's a spiritual man himself. You know. He put that down, he came over, and then he was also drawn in by the message of the 13 grandmothers. You know. And one of them had brought her son to this talk, or her grandson, one of her grandsons. And your grandson, you know, he's right up the res. She goes, you don't know what he's doing here. She says, he's just going to go with grandma and get a trip and get some free food, and this kind of stuff. He says, but this is what you're here for, son. You know, she was telling him his responsibility as seventh generation. He's a real Indian kid, you know, just sitting there. By his grandma, you know. She said, I get up in the morning and I raise my hands to the sun. And every night I turn around and I raise my, you know, hands as it goes down and recognizes, you know, the new day and the ending of the day, gives thanks. Well, now that's just scientific. That's a spiritual time, right? Because what's happening in the air when that night and day change happens? There's a lot of, you know, electrical activity. I don't even know how to say it, ions or something that are passing through each other as that sun is kind of going down the mountain and it's coming up. Those 2 times of the day are powerful. That's why we do ceremony at sun up and sun down, because those are powerful times of the day. Now that's just scientific. I think it's kind of funny that I think it's funny. I'm grateful that I'm so grateful that we can talk, that we can bridge this. You know, we can bridge the spiritual and the academic. But again, it's only talk unless we do something. You know, I remember when I ran for these. I had all these little contests. My mom would put me in tribal princess. I was a tribal princess in Miss Indian Nevada, in her tribal council of Nevada. And, you know, I was always in these little pageant kinds of things, and I had to talk. And oh my gosh, it was so hard. so difficult to just talk, you know, when I had to talk like that. Because that's just a replication of sort of Western hierarchical stuff, you know. Tribal, we did it too, obviously, you know. I mean, we all became, you know, Western in our thought processes, and I was a little Indian princess all the time, you know, trying to figure out how to talk. I don't know why I said that. There was a point. So, I'm going to go ahead and just, can I close it with a, I'll just do a little closing then, and would encourage you to come back on Thursday, and, you know, if there's something that I could address, you know, maybe the PowerPoints will be ready, or maybe we won't need them again. You know, I don't know, but maybe on Thursday, you know, we can, if it's okay with Jackie, we can do a few more exercises, you know, energy kind of work, you know, if that works. I'm always slightly nervous, but I just got my tenure, so, you know. We're gonna do it here. Do this. You guys gotta cheer me on though, because, you know, it's my students that woke me up. I remember sitting in my multicultural class and Anita McCovey, get to know that name, Dr. McCovey, because you will know it. And she's like, Dr. Grayshield, why are you always sticking up for the Western paradigm? And I'm like, who are you to talk to me like that? You know, and it's like, and I had kind of gone to sleep, and she saw me and like, stay your heart, speak your heart, you know, and so she woke me up, you know, and gave me hope, and other students and other processes, you know. So if we were in an Indigenous paradigm, and that's the way we were functioning from, we would close this meeting up with a recognition of our ancestors, you know, all of those that have come before us, you know, all the gifts and the things that they have. We are the compilation of our mothers and our fathers and our grandparents. We are the end vibration. You take that a step further. You're the end vibration of your mother and your father, of all of the choices and decisions that they made. You know, we would recognize the direction of the sun coming up, you know, the direction of the east, Palangia, the direction of the eagle, Palangia, Wehikikita, Letwa, Wehikikita. Because the eagle has big sight and vision, you can see from above. You know, they can see, you know, we're just stuck down here sometimes, we can't hardly see, but they can see, so I'm really grateful for that. And, you know, and mushkulu wehikikita, letwa wehikikita, you know, the way of the snake, you know, the beauty way, the southern direction, the snake that crawls on the ground and sheds its skin, you know, representing the, you know, always shedding that outer layer. The snake was beautiful before, but it's always more beautiful because that inward just keeps coming out as it crawls upon the ground and sheds that skin, so it represents that. So I'm really grateful for that and for knowing, for that way of knowing too, and I'm really grateful for the direction, you know, in the West, Washoe, you know, the way of the big animals and the medicine people, you know, the spiritual path. I'm really grateful that there's a spiritual path there that, you know, is so much bigger than any of us and kind of laughs at us sometimes, you know, but that we're so connected with that we can reconnect at any time, that knowledge and wisdom. And I'm really, really grateful for you know, my relatives from the stars, all those that are above us that come, you know, the one from above, God, you know, Yahweh, Jehovah, and, you know, whatever we want to call it, up there, you know, or not up there, out there, you know, the multidimensionality of spiritual connection. I'm so grateful to know about that, to know that that is there. Even if I don't understand it all, that can be the F up. You know, we don't have to understand everything. We don't need to. It's not important that we understand it. It's important that we are ready. That's what's important. You know, I'm really, really grateful for our Earth Mother, the earth that sustains us and gives us plants, you know, the standing nations and those that crawl on the floor and the ones that swim in the ocean, and, you know, all the mer people and the mermaids and, you know, all the creepy crawlers and, you know, everything. You know, I'm just really grateful that this earth has the resources to sustain all of us, you know, in that way. And, you know, we need to, so I just want to recognize and, you know, say I'm so grateful for the earth, you know, that's here. You know, everything comes from the earth. You know, everything comes from the earth. So I want to recognize that. And I'm really grateful for myself and all the journey that I've